Hello everyone, this is Johnny and welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to do a profile on this particular cultivar of Japanese maple. This is an Acer palmatum Amber Ghost, so stick around as I talk about why this is one of my favorite trees. So Amber Ghost is of course part of the Ghost series that was introduced by Talon Buchholz. And there are quite a few trees in the Ghost series, and I do actually own a Grandma Ghost and a Purple Ghost, and I'll grab those here. So here is an Acer palmatum Grandma Ghost, and this is a lovely tree that I bought last year. Still pretty small, but I'm excited to grow that one out. And then here is a Purple Ghost, a very beautiful specimen here as well. But nonetheless, this is one of my favorite trees in my collection, and there are several reasons why it's my favorite. One, I really do like trees that have the reticulated veins. So there are some examples here that you can see, and I'll give some close-up video footage of this, but the veins themselves are very prominent and they're a little bit darker green, and then you have the lighter parts of the leaf there in the middle, and it just really shows off the veining, the reticulated veining, so that's really stunning. Now, one of the things I like about a lot of Japanese maples, including this particular tree, is you really get a lot of interest in the tree for at least 3 seasons. Coral bark Japanese maples, you definitely get 4 seasons out of that, but for this particular one, you get a lot of different colors throughout the year. So in the spring, then when this is opening up, you get kind of this pinky salmon. Some people call it amber. That's where the name Amber Ghost comes from, but I would call it almost more of a salmon orange color that this opens up in the spring. And it just is a stunning color in the spring. And then when it comes to your summer color, this is a good example as we move from spring into summer. You're starting to get some different variations. So where this tree gets a lot of sun, you can see that there's a lot more of that pinkish tint to these leaves. And I did forget to mention here, the leaves themselves are kind of ruffly and the margins are a little bit jagged. But you can see here kind of that reddish pink coming out here in that leaf. Some of the leaves that don't get as much sun, like an example over here, you can see that it has way less color and it's just more of the lighter kind of peachish green there in the middle with a reticulated veining and just a teeny bit of color there in the middle. So in the summer, you kind of get a mix depending on what kind of sun you get. Then when it comes to your fall color, the fall colors, you get a lot of reds and orange tones with this tree. So 3 seasons where it looks pretty stunning. And even if you have this in a lot of shade, this particular tree still looks great with the reticulated veining. And then you're also seeing here the seeds starting to form. And they're like kind of a bright pinkish color. It's actually a pretty stunning seed Samara color right there. Now this tree definitely needs a good pruning and shaping, but I'm holding off on that right now because I want to take some cuttings and some scion cuttings from this particular tree to propagate that via cuttings and through grafting onto rootstock. I want to do that, and so I want to grow out some of these branches for that purpose. So ordinarily I would come in and shape this up a little bit more. Before I started filming this video, I did do a very, very light pruning, and I might do a little bit more pruning after I do this video, but once again, I want to save a lot of these branches for propagation reasons. But nonetheless, this is a semi-upright tree, so it's a very typical shaped tree in that regard. Okay, when it comes to the mature size of this tree, this is something that you definitely want to take care when you're trying to figure out the size of a Japanese maple before you put it in a specific spot. A lot of times you'll see on a tag or on a website, this tree gets 10, 15, 12, whatever feet tall in so many years. And some people will just list that as a mature size. Some people will list an actual time span there, 15 feet tall in 10 years. For this particular tree, it looks like most people list this somewhere around 10 feet tall when mature. But I believe that based on the upright form of it and everything, maybe that 10-foot height is maybe a 15-year-old tree or so. But once this tree is like 30, 40 years old, I could definitely see this tree being taller than 10 feet. Right now, if you were to go to the bottom of the pot to the top, it's definitely a little bit under 6 feet tall. So it definitely has some room to grow. And right now, it's hard to see the structure because once again, I need to prune this a little bit, but we do have the main leader here that branches off, and then we have these 2 branches down below. And it's got a good shape, as is good upright shape. Okay, when it comes to the sun tolerance and cold hardiness of this tree, most Japanese maples are listed being hardy down to zone 5. And that's really just kind of that very bottom. You might actually have some years in a zone 5 where you need to protect your Japanese maples because, sometimes in a zone 5 you get something that drops a little bit below what those normal minimums are. And definitely when you are growing a tree, a Japanese maple tree in a pot, you really have to be even more careful because a Japanese maple tree grown in a pot really isn't hardy down below zone 6. And even in zone 6 you have to be careful because you could have some extreme winters that do kill that tree. So really you're pretty safe in a zone 7 or a zone 8 in a pot with a Japanese maple. And if you're in the ground, you're pretty safe with a zone 6, 7, 8, 9. And so sometimes when you get in higher zones, you have an issue with the tree not going into dormancy or getting too much sun, too much heat. Now I do grow this on the east side of my house, and it gets 2 to 3 hours of sun maximum per day, full sun. And most of the year it does pretty good, but when we get into really the extreme summer heat, I will get just a little bit of crispiness on the edges, especially on the top parts of the tree. So I would say ideally you would want to protect this from some of that afternoon strong heat in hotter areas. And I live in a zone 8B, but if I were choosing the ideal setup, I would give it some morning sun and afternoon shade. Now, since I do a lot of propagating on this channel, I did want to just briefly mention the ways that you can propagate with this tree. Now, obviously you can collect seed, and that's something that I do plan to do. Hopefully a lot of this seed will mature and I'll be able to pick that this fall. And you can definitely propagate via seeds. However, once again, when you propagate, I've said this in past videos, but when you propagate via seeds, you're not going to get a tree that's exactly like the mother tree. You're going to get some variations of that. Some might look kind of similar, some might have different leaves altogether, and you'll have different growth patterns, etc. So growing from seed is great, but you're going to get something that is often very different from the mother tree or not exactly the same, maybe with some of the characteristics. You can also, I've had some luck, some decent luck, propagating this amber ghost via cuttings. And I'm going to go grab a pretty mature tree that was grown from a cutting and just show you an example of a good healthy tree that you can grow with this amber ghost variety of via cuttings. Okay, so this tree maybe 3 years ago was grown from a cutting. And this one has been grown in quite a bit of shade, so you can see the reticulated veining, and there's not a lot of color on it right now because of it being in shade. But a good, healthy, pretty good sized tree now. And it looks like this can grow out into a good landscape tree in the future. So some Japanese maple trees don't do very well with cuttings, but this particular one seems to do just fine. Now, beyond growing Japanese maple trees from seed or via cuttings, the typical way that most Japanese maple tree cultivars are grown is via grafting. And here's an example of an amber ghost that I've personally grafted. But once again, this tree is a beautiful tree. It's one of the favorites in my collection. And I hope that this highlight of this cultivar was helpful to you. If you're not yet subscribed to this channel, please consider subscribing because I have a lot more exciting content that I plan to put out this year. And until next time, thanks for watching.